being a nurse or being a doctor or being able to diagnose, but you have belief, leaving here with belief. And seeing someone like Paula on stage, not asking the question, is it going to be easy? Don't ask for it to be easy, ask for it to be worth it. Don't ask for it. The late great Jim Rohn said, don't ask for it to be easy, ask for it to be worth it. Don't ask for it to be easy, ask for you to get better. Who here can get better? Who here can get better? Yeah. Come on guys, who here can get better? Yeah, awesome. Hey, we've got an amazing speaker, and I really want you to be on the edge of your chair tonight. If you're tuning in from the US tonight, I want you to be on the edge of your chairs taking some great notes. Our next speaker is a international best-selling author. He's a social researcher, and he's an award-winning speaker. And when I say award-winning speaker, I mean he shared the stage with the likes of Whoopi Goldberg, Larry King, and Bill Gates. Bill who? Yes. Bill Gates, that's right. So we're really fortunate. We've been trying to secure him as a speaker for Manatech for years now. This is our second year trying to get him, and he said yes. Say yes. Yes. So we're really excited. He is a specialist and an expert in business culture. He's a social researcher. He understands emerging trends, and he's consulted to some of the largest brands in the world to help them stay in front of the curve and navigate change. Guys like Pepsi Cola, KPMG, Cisco Systems, and he's also done some very deep work in our industry. So would you please give a warm, energetic, Manatech welcome to Mr. Michael Mcqueen.
I go to. That was the most superb introduction. Thank you so much. Grab a seat. And I actually love the fact that I tripped up the stage. That's sort of like, that keeps it real. Often you see people on these platforms and they appear to have it all together. We don't. So it's sort of nice to have those moments. It's really great to be here. You said you've asked me for 2 years. It is such an honour to be here. It's easy to say yes to you guys. I've been a fan of your company for lots of years. In fact, I think it was 2008. A colleague of mine handed me a book that I found at the time incredibly impactful. It's a book called Undeniable Destiny. Yeah. Who's read that book here? A lot of you have. And that was my first introduction to Manatech. It was a time when I was starting off my own business, and that early discouraging stage, I found that book so incredibly encouraging. So just great to be here because I know something of the genesis story. The DNA, the mission of the company, so it's great to be a part of that. Thank you, Sinead, and thank you, Olivia, wherever you guys are, for the invitation to be here. We've only got a very short session together today. I'm going to take you through to big lunch. I want to make sure we finish on time. I even leave some time for Q&A at the end. We'll see how we go. We're going to talk about a theme this morning that is so incredibly important at this time of the year. Coming to a new year, 2018. Who wants this year to be a cracker of a year for you in business? Hands up. Most of you do. You wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. This theme of momentum is so vital. As we go into a new year, how do you make sure this year is a year marked by that sense of effortless growth and buoyancy, that energy that comes when you've got the tailwind of momentum propelling you along? And if you're relatively new to the business, the challenge for you is how do you build momentum? If you've already got that momentum in your business, how do you make sure you keep it this year? But if you look back at last year, and if you were really honest in your heart of hearts, like it was a tough year, it wasn't my best year, how do you get momentum back? How do you recapture that dynamism again? So I want to talk about this whole theme of momentum. How do you get it? How do you keep it? How do you get it back? A bit of my backstory though I'm going to cover off in a few minutes to give you some context, but just to get our heads in the zone this morning, I want to start with a game. This is a game I call, Were You Paying Attention? Okay, in a few moments, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you all back to high school science class. To probably somewhere about year 10 or year 11, depending on where you went to high school. And I want to ask you a question related to something you learned in high school science. I wonder how many of you were actually paying attention. Okay, some of you look nervous all of a sudden. Okay, here's a question I want to ask you. Which law of physics states that matter left to itself will always tend toward decay and disintegration? Now, how many of you looking at that question already know you weren't paying attention? You've got no clue what the answer to this question is. Hands up. Lots of you, I love your honesty. Okay, I'll give you 4 options, multiple choice. Is it A, law of atrophy? Is it B, law of dystrophy? Is it C, law of entropy? Or is it D, the law of dysentery? I'm going to give you 10 seconds, compare notes to the person at your table, and then we'll come back and do a straw poll. Compare notes, compare boundaries. And then we'll do a poll. There's your countdown, 3 seconds to go. Okay, show of hands, who here thinks it might be A, the law of atrophy? Alright, so very confident names, like this whole table, like, yeah, we have nailed it. Awesome, okay. Who thinks it might be B, the law of dystrophy? Any Bs? Only a few, like less confident, like, I don't know, I'll give it a shot, whatever. Okay, who thinks it might be C, the law of entropy? Okay, a few hands, we've got some double hands at the back, very confident. Okay, and there's only one in every crowd. Who's going to go for D, the law of dysentery? Okay. Correct answer, interestingly, wasn't the most common answer just given. The correct answer, and our friend at the back there, the 2 hands up, he knew it. Correct answer here is actually the answer C, the law of entropy. Now remember in school, our teachers would teach us stuff like this and they'd say, pay attention because one day you'll need to know this. And when we were all 16, we went, as if I'll ever need to know this because you're 16 and you think you know everything at age 16. And I probably said the same thing in Year 10 science when I was learning about this stuff, not realising a number of years later I would dedicate a chunk of my career to studying that law. And how it applies to businesses, to brands, to organisations, to individuals when it comes to peak performance. And so to give you the backstory, to set some context, I've been studying business trends, peak performance, culture for coming up to 14 years now. But a very pivotal year for my research was 2011. Because that is the year we saw a number of massive brands fall prey to that law of entropy. We saw in 4 months the demise of brands like Borders Bookstore closing up shop, Saab Automotive. And the big kahuna, of course, though, was Kodak. And that was the big one because, I mean, they were the Google or the Apple of their day. And seeing so many of these big brands fall over so rapidly, I embarked on a research project back in 2011 that culminated in a book 3.5 years later called Winning the Battle for Relevance. And my goal with that research and in this book was to essentially answer 2 questions. First question was, why do the mighty fall? What happens to a business that has been successful, going gangbusters, at the cutting edge, notable, profitable, all the rest of it, that causes them to lose that edge? Now, we often hear that success leaves clues, and yet failure leaves a whole lot of clues as well. So how do we learn from what some businesses have done badly over the years? And you think of the number of brands and businesses over the years that have, in the last probably 4 or 5 years particularly, are now a shadow of their former selves. You think of the significance of some of these brands up on the screen here. I mean, BlackBerry is one that stands out to me. Anyone here still use a BlackBerry? I should just check. Because honestly, last week I was chatting to someone and he did. I'm like, can I have a photo with you? This might be the last time I see this, okay? Well, yeah, it's interesting. How many of you have ever owned a BlackBerry phone? Hands up. Okay, lots more hands. Now, to give you an idea of how quickly that brand lost relevance, January 2010 in the US, BlackBerry had 43% market share. 2.5 years later, it was 0.7% market share. That is how quickly you can lose your edge if you're not careful. Another brand that stands out to me up there that's an interesting one is the brand of Atari. Now, I was speaking at a conference just down the road here a number of years ago when Steve Wozniak was the keynote speaker, Apple's co-founder. And this was a massive thing, big stadium full of people, and I had some time backstage in the green room with Steve Wozniak, and we're talking about some of these brands, and he said one of the saddest ones from his perspective is Atari. Because he said, I wish you could see it. When Steve Jobs and I started Apple, our goal was to build a company modeled on Atari. They were at a peak of innovation at the time. And to see them go from that place to knocked out of the game 30 years later is just incredibly sad to have watched unfold. And so what I wanted to look at in the book and in the research was why did this happen? But more importantly, the second question in my research was, why do the enduring prevail? What is it that other businesses, in comparison to these ones, do differently that allows them to stay at the cutting edge? And have a look at this collection of brands up on the screen behind me. Brands that have been around for not just years or decades, in some cases for centuries. The question is, what have these brands done differently? And what are the lessons we can extract from that for you as a business builder? In your context, in this company, with your products, what are some of the lessons? And there are many we could take from this. The interesting thing is looking at the research as to why some companies prevail, others don't. Obviously things like reinvention, things like innovation come up. But the one thing that came up that surprised me, time and time again, was this theme of momentum. Momentum is the secret, often hidden ingredient in any business that lasts the distance and stays at the cutting edge. The challenge with momentum is this, and this is why we don't give it a lot of attention. We talk about it, but often you don't hear a lot of good solid research on momentum. The reason is, even though it's based in science, in fact it's related to many of the laws of thermodynamics we just talked about, the law of entropy for instance. Even though it's a scientific concept, momentum is really hard to pin down, it's hard to quantify. And yet it's very easy to discern. When I'm working with clients and I'll say, how would you know if you've got momentum, that tailwind propelling you along? No matter where I am in the world, the sort of phrases keep coming to the surface. People will say, well, we know we've got momentum because this is how it feels. It feels like we're just in the zone. We're firing on all cylinders, we're on a roll, we're riding high, we're in a sweet spot. There is that sense of effortlessness and buoyancy that comes when you've got momentum working for you. And the reality is, while that's fun to be in that state of momentum, we also all know what it feels like. Every one of us, myself included, we know what it feels like when you lose momentum. When that tailwind becomes a headwind. And the phrase is typically that in giveaway you've lost momentum. When you hear phrases like this, it just feels like we've lost our mojo. It's like we're in a rut. No matter what we do, we're just not getting traction, not getting results. It becomes a dull drudgery. This is a very exhausting, frustrating place. Often despondency and depression follows. And let's be really candid. If you were to do an honest poll right now, there'd be a percentage in the room who, if you looked at your year last year, you go, well, I sort of feel like that was us. That was my year in business. I'm going to talk about how to get above the line here and how to stay there. But before we do that, I want to leverage the experience in the room. Because I'm guessing, not just from a business perspective, in other areas of life, you may have been part of a church or a Rotary Club or a sporting team that's had momentum, had growth, had success, and then lost it. I want you to reflect for a few moments on what is your experience, and the question I'm going to talk about at tables for just a few seconds is this one here. What factors in your experience cause an individual or a team to lose momentum, to get into a rut? So I'm going to give you just 20 or 30 seconds. What in your experience leads to the stuff we've just talked about? 20 seconds, go for it.
No activity.
No vision. No leadership.
All right, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, who's brave enough to shout out just either in your own reflections or discussions? What is it causes this? Yeah?
Stop doing the basics.
You stop doing the basics. That's often the case, isn't it? That things are actually part of the secret sauce in the early stages. It's interesting, when we talk about innovation, the key question I ask to my clients in a consulting role is this: what have you stopped doing? Not what you need to do differently. What have you actually stopped doing that isn't innovative? It's old, but it's old and it worked. It was part of the secret formula. Often it's the relationship stuff. That often falls off the radar. So stopping doing the basics. Thank you. What else causes teams or individuals to get to a rut? Yeah?
Lack of integrity.
A lack of integrity. Absolutely. You don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, don't you? That's the challenge you see in many businesses. Thank you. Yeah? A lack of challenge. So you just sort of get apathetic and bored. Great. Love that. Come back to that thing. Yeah?
Inability to make a change fast enough.
An inability to make change fast enough. That's so true. So true. We'll talk about that thing. Thank you. Yeah?
Lack of vision.
A lack of vision, for sure. Thank you. Yeah? Distraction. Have you read my notes, you guys? It's true. We'll talk about a number of these things. Thank you. Yeah. Was there a hand over here? Yeah?
I was going to say distraction, but no activity.
No activity. That sense of inertia that often kicks in. I've got to say, I was talking to Al before the session, Stream Morning Tea. You are not going to want to not be in the room when he shares this afternoon. I just had a bit of a glimpse of the data from, was it November and January, were the 2 months you were showing me? It's extraordinary. Like the level of momentum you guys have seen, even if you haven't sensed it in your own part of the world, the level of momentum in this business is staggering. And you're going to see some data that I think you'll agree is pretty exciting stuff. And so the question, of course, is how do you catch that wave of momentum and make sure you don't get into a rut in your own context? That's what we're going to focus on. And you know, in school we learned a scientific formula for momentum, that is momentum equals velocity times mass. I want to give you the business formula for momentum this morning. So get out your pens and paper, we're going to move very quickly here. There are 3 essential elements to building momentum that sticks, to avoid getting into a rut, that listless state of losing your edge. Here are the 3 elements. The formula is this: momentum equals A, plus F times C. I'm going to unpack what each of these three elements are. The first element in this formula, the A, stands for activity. And it touches on the theme a few of you just mentioned a few moments ago. And that should be no huge surprise because momentum is about motion, it's about being in motion, it's about movement. So activity is going to be part of that. But here's the thing I want to impress upon you this morning. Not all activity is created equal. There is no point being busy if you're not being effective. And this is the most common frustration I hear from clients. They'll say, we are busy than we've ever been before, but we're getting less results. That's frustrating. And yet so many business owners are in exactly that space. Now, of course, no one gets busy doing stuff that doesn't get results on purpose. We don't deliberately derail our success. So the question is, how can you ensure the things you're doing every day and every week to build your Manatech business won't just leave you spinning your wheels? How can you make sure these things will actually get you traction? Being effective, not busy. I want to give you a simple two-way test for determining whether activity will get results or not. The first question you need to ask yourself is this. Look at what you do every single day, every single week in your business and ask, really honestly, are my activities, I feel like we've lost our clip here, are your activities, number one, inspired? Are you actually purpose-driven or just being productive? There's a big difference between those two things. Now it's interesting because you can be busy, but being busy without inspiration is a bit like trying to run an engine without oil. You can have fuel, you can have a great engine, but without oil. You can run hard, but only for a short period of time, because as soon as things start to heat up, an engine without oil begins to crack and break down. It's exactly the same for us. We were designed to operate with inspiration. If you're just going through the motions, busy without a sense of why you're busy, your body, your soul, your spirit will start to break. And this is the challenge for all of us, is how do you stay focused on purpose? Now last year I had an interesting conversation backstage at a conference in Auckland with this guy here. Who are the Kiwis in the room? Any Kiwis in the house? Okay, a few of you. Any of you know who this guy on the screen is?
Yeah.
Steve Hansen, his name is. Okay, those who are Kiwis may know of Steve Hansen. He is the coach, of course, of the All Blacks. And even as an Aussie, we can acknowledge the fact that the All Blacks are the most successful sporting team in history, bar none. The statistics are pretty compelling. And it was interesting speaking backstage with Steve Hansen. I said, you're coaching a team of athletes who have been at the peak for as long as almost anyone can remember. How do you keep them on the edge? How do you keep them at their A game? Essentially, how do you keep momentum in the team? And he shared a number of things that I can't repeat because he said this is like the secret sauce. But there was one thing he shared with me that he then went on to share from stage. I thought, well, fair game, I'll share it too. And what he said was this, he said it's all about where the team's focusing, where they're dwelling. He said the most dangerous thing for the team is this, when I catch them or hear them focusing on the past. Last week's game, last season result. He said that's dangerous for two reasons, because if it was a great season or a great game last week, they can easily fall into the complacency trap. They start riding off the success of the past. And I love the old expression, it's so true. The moment you think you've made it, you've passed it. The two essential ingredients to staying at the cutting edge, humility and hunger. The moment you lose that sense of humility and openness to new things and new ways and new ideas, or you lose the hunger, what's the next thing? So the moment you get complacent, that's dangerous. But he said it's also equally dangerous focusing on the past if it was a bad match or a bad season. And he said this might surprise you, even with a team who are elite athletes, their confidence can get knocked so easily. My challenge to you as you come into this new year is, where's your focus? If last year was a great year, please don't get stuck. Don't get complacent. Don't enjoy the success too much. But if it was a tough year, guard your confidence. Come into the new year and rule off. It's a new year. There's new opportunities. But he said, looking back is dangerous. He said, also it's equally dangerous when I catch the team looking just to the present. Like this training routine, this week's game. He said, because when they're focused on the present, they're reactive. He said, my constant challenge as a coach is to have them focus forward. What's coming next? What's the next goal? What's the overarching vision? He said, that's when I know they will stay on purpose. And it's exactly the same for us. Now, I know that this is the first non-incentive conference for you guys. So the fact is, you've all paid to be here. You've given up your weekend, you've travelled distances. I'm guessing I'm speaking to a room full of people who are determined and committed to build a business. That's great. But can I suggest, if you're going to build momentum this year, determination and commitment ain't going to cut it. See, they're impressive virtues, but the problem with determination and commitment is they are not infectious. When you talk to people who are determined and committed, you don't catch their determination and commitment. What's infectious? Passion, zeal, enthusiasm, a sense of purpose, even a sense of calling. I love that word that Chris used this morning. This is not just a job, it's a calling. When you've got that clear sense of reason and purpose, everything changes and people pick up on it. How many of you love live theatre here? Anyone love going to see plays on stage? Anyone love live theatre? A number of you do. My wife is an actor, owns a theatre company in Sydney, so I spent a lot of time at live theatre, which is never really my scene before we met, but it's become my scene in the last few years. What's interesting is we were walking home, walking away from a play a few years ago, and the cast were world class. The script was extraordinary, it was a very well-known play. But as we're walking back to the car, I said, gosh, I felt a bit flat tonight. What was the deal with that? I said, I guess that's what happens when you're doing the same show night after night, week after week, month after month. I guess that's just the way it goes. And she said, oh, no. That's when being a good actor comes into play. I said, well, how do you do that? How do you keep fresh night after night, week after week, month after month? She said, the most important thing is to keep the words, keep the movements connected with the motivation behind it. The moment you disconnect what you're saying on stage and what you're doing on stage with the thoughts or the motivation behind those actions or words, the spark disappears instantly. If you're on stage, you're acting something out and you're thinking about dinner when you get home, what are you going to do tomorrow morning, dentist appointment at 9:30? People, even though you might be doing the right things and not forgetting the lines, people sense it, they sniff it. Because there's inauthenticity, there's a lack of passion and purpose behind it. You know, it's exactly the same for you. You can be talking about the products, explaining the compensation plan, trying to get people on board, but if what you are doing, your activities aren't connected to purpose, people sense it. They sniff it. I love the old saying, and it's such an apt saying, it's that you can't give away what you haven't got. If you are not inspired, if you are not passionate about your business, not the products, but your role within them, what you're looking to achieve, how can you possibly inspire others to want to join you? My challenge to some of you is you need to spend some time this weekend, get a blank sheet of paper, grab a coffee, sit down. What's the goal? What's the vision? And then make sure everything you're doing, everything on your to-do list connects with that reason why. The moment you disconnect those two things, people sense it because you're just going through and focusing on the what and the how, you've forgotten the why. So the first question is this, are your activities inspired? Second question you need to ask if your activities are going to build momentum rather than see you spinning your wheels is a question of, are your activities innovative? Are you doing stuff in a sufficiently new way to keep it fresh, to keep it relevant? That's why I love what I've heard from the last 12 months and even what you shared this morning, Chris, about the need to change. And it's true, change is so important, but my goodness, it's hard. It's uncomfortable. I mean, as human beings, we love to settle. We love the safe, the proven, the predictable, the measurable, and yet we've got to keep challenging ourselves constantly. Many of you would know this quote here from Albert Einstein. He said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Who's heard that before? It's almost a cliche these days. Can I suggest to you, though, that if Einstein were to define insanity today, in light of all the change, all the disruption, all the fundamental upheavals we're seeing in business right now, I reckon he would define insanity the very opposite way that it is. I reckon he'd say this, actually, you know what, today, bearing in mind the rate of change, insanity is actually doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get the same result. And what I mean by that is this. If you are using the same techniques, the same scripts, the same approaches, the same social media platforms you were using 5 years ago, expecting them to be as effective now as they were 5 years ago, you're going to be sorely disappointed. The market's moved on. This is particularly true if you're trying to reach out to younger people, millennials, Gen Y. I mean, that was the group I spent my first 3 years in research, starting back in 2004, focusing on. They're a very different bunch. A lot of the work I've done, in fact, one of the books I wrote years ago was all about how to bridge that gap. What's the language that works? What are the approaches that work with millennials or Gen Y? Because if you just do what you've always done, it ain't going to cut it with this group. And yet change is difficult. I love the quote though, 2,600-year-old quote, more apt today than ever before. The great Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said this. He said, resisting change is a bit like trying to hold your breath. Even if you are successful, it's not going to end well, okay? And so let's just air the reality. You guys have had a stack of change in the last 12 months. Some of it you've loved, some of it you haven't. Some of you are like, I would have done that if it was my choice. I think they went too far, they didn't go far enough, whatever it is. But here's the reality, this is the new normal. This is the chance to rule off and go, okay, this is the new normal, where do I fit in it? The change has happened, I can try to resist it, but as we said, it's not going to end well resisting change in the long run. Now, can I suggest when it comes to innovation, one of the most powerful tools you've got is the person in your team, in your downline, who's got the freshest eyes. Might be the person who only signed up last Wednesday. Brand new to the business. I mean, how many of you, is this your first Manatech event? Hands up if this is your first ever Manatech conference or event. Those with their hands up right now, you have the most important perspective in the room at the moment. Here's why. You don't know how it's always been done. No one's told you yet. You're new, you're fresh. That is such a gift. People with fresh eyes will often see the most simple solutions to problems the experts make really complicated. Never experienced, say, you're working on a project, you just can't see the way forward, then someone walks in from outside the situation and says, have you considered doing this? You're like, oh, that is so obvious, but I couldn't see it. I was too close. And so people with fresh eyes will do this. I love this example, by the way, from a school exam response of seeing a simple solution to a complicated problem. And school teachers will tell you that's not called fresh eyes, it's just called smart ass, okay? But it does somewhat make the point. And this is the challenge of people with fresh eyes, they will see things differently. I love the insight from the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. He said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And that's the beauty of people with fresh eyes. Now, another great thing people with fresh eyes do, particularly if they're from that millennial or Gen Y cohort, they will come into your downline, they'll come into this business, and they'll ask the most important innovation question of all, the question of why. Why do we do it that way? Hey, why do we do it at all? What's the purpose here? That is such a powerful question, especially if it's asked with humility. As a Gen Y, I can tell you one of the things I think is most concerning about my generation is often a lack of humility. Coming and asking the question why, I think you want to challenge everything and say this is the way we reckon it should be done. You've got to approach it with humility and go, okay, this is my perspective. It may not be right or wrong, but this is my perspective for what it's worth. But I reckon the best example of asking the why question, bringing about innovation, came from an example I read in the Army a few years ago. A group of young recruits doing their basic training. They got to one point in their training where they were being instructed in how to use these things here, artillery guns. And their instructing officer was going through step by step how to use these things. They got to one point of the lesson, and the officer said, okay, when you load a round into the gun, you need to count 8 seconds from when you load it to when you fire it. Not 7 seconds, not 9, it's got to be 8. And one of the young millennial Gen Y recruits did something this group always do, put up his hand, he's like, sir, what's the deal with that? Why 8 seconds? Now you can imagine how all this went down with an army officer, and he gave some non-response, moved on with the lesson. But a question stuck with him, and a few days later this officer asked a colleague of his, another officer, do you know why we wait 8 seconds? And all the young grunts answered that I didn't know. And so this colleague of his says, I don't know either, let's do some research. They dug around through the archives, and here's what they discovered. The reason for the 8-second rule actually dates back to, get this, the mid-1800s, when we used to use horses to drag artillery guns into battle. And what they had discovered in the 1800s, and this was a significant innovation at that point, by the way, is that it took about 8 seconds to move the horses far enough back away from the guns so when you fired the gun, the horse wouldn't get freaked out by the noise. Now, we haven't used horses for just a few decades to drag guns, but the rule had stuck. Even though it made no sense, it served no purpose. And what did it take? It took someone with fresh eyes coming in and asking the why question. That is often where innovation comes from. My challenge to you is as your team grows, if you're going to stay at the cutting edge, build and keep momentum, you've got to be open to changing the way you do things. When people with fresh eyes come in and ask why, see that as a gift, not a challenge to the status quo. Alright, so that's the first key, activity, the first element of this equation. Activities that are inspired, purpose-driven, and activities that are innovative or fresh, up-to-date, relevant. Okay, the second element of this formula, the F in the formula for building momentum, clickers having fun again. If we move forward, that would be great. The F stands for focus. It's really difficult to overstate the role of focus in getting breakthrough results in anything in life, especially in business. I love the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said this, he said, the successful person is merely the average person focused. In other words, you see people getting up here and getting recognised for different levels in the business, and it's not because they're smarter. Maybe it's not even because they necessarily worked harder, but because they were focused on getting results. They did what it took for as long as it took until they got it done. And yet, let's be honest, being focused, concentrating is harder today than ever before. One of the big things, of course, that impacts our focus is the technology that's constantly eroding our attention spans. We're learning very quickly how not to be focused on a daily basis. But a bit of a pop quiz here, I thought you'd like this one. The average adult, according to recent research, the average adult's attention span today is what? Four options. Is it 2 minutes? Is it 45 seconds? Is it 12 seconds? Or do you think it might be 8 seconds? Okay, hands up if you think it might be 2 minutes. Who'd say 2 minutes? Only a few of you. Okay, what about 45 seconds? Okay, 12 seconds? Who's going to go for 8 seconds? All right, you guys are smart. That's true. In fact, if this report, when this survey was first done in the year 2000, the correct answer was 12 seconds. When they repeated it the year before last, it was a grand total of 8 seconds. The attention span of the average human. Now, to put this in context, this means as adult humans, we now have attention spans 1 second less than the average goldfish, who have attention spans of 9 seconds, apparently, okay? And you think about the role technology has played in this, in our ability to focus and how it's eroded that. I want you to think for a moment, do a tally in your mind and write a number on your sheet in front of you. Do a tally of how many screens are in your household right now. We're talking every screen owned by you, your partner, your spouse, your kids. We're talking TV screens, laptops, tablet devices, smartwatches, smartphones, the whole deal. Out of every screen in your house, write a number down on the sheet in front of you. And I ask you to stand if the number of screens in your household is more than 5. More than 5, stand up. Let's stand up if it's more than 5. Right, that's a lot of you. How interesting. Okay, stay standing if it's more than 8. More than 8, stay standing. Used to be quick rescore. More than 10? Wow, more than 12? More than 15? Alright, we're going to do a combination at the back here. Alright, more than 20. Anyone got more than 20 screens in their house? How many of you got at the back here? They're talking to each other now, trying to figure it out. How many do you reckon you've got?
31.
31 screens! Well, it's interesting. Can you beat 31? No, you can't. 31 screens. But it's interesting. If you were to go back and actually count them, that number may not seem so extreme. Now it's interesting, of course, it's not just the volume of screens we've got around us, it's how addicted we are to them, isn't it? That's the challenge. I wonder how many of you have walked into a cafe or a restaurant and encountered a scene a little bit like this one here. Who secretly judges people who do this at cafes and restaurants? Come on. And some of you are like, not even secretly, I just judge them, okay? The interesting thing is, I do the same thing, I judge people who do this, particularly when it's like 2 parents and a kid. You know, that's the thing. The problem is, then I catch myself doing the same thing. And that's the moment you're like, oh, I'm actually falling victim to the same deal here. It's interesting, a few years ago I was speaking at a conference on Hamilton Island, and I arrived on the Tuesday afternoon, ready for the conference on the Wednesday morning, and the sound check was about 10 a.m, so I had a few hours in the morning. And when I checked into the hotel, I was flipping through the compendium for stuff to do on Hamilton Island. It was my first time there. And one of the things in the little compendium in the room said, climb to the top of Passage Peak for sunrise. Has anyone done this before, climb to the top of Passage Peak? Only a few hands. It's well worth doing if you ever get to Hamilton Island. Passage Peak is the mountain at the eastern end of the island. It's the largest peak, the highest peak in the whole of the Whitsundays. So I thought, well, I've got time in the morning. Checked the sunrise, it was about 5:30. Okay, about 45 minutes to hike, according to the book. So set the alarm for about 4:30, pitch black. Got up, threw on the exercise clothes, headed out the back, and actually had my phone with me as a torch. I used it for probably the first 2/3 of the trip because it was just so dark. Found my way up through the mountain pass, through the rainforest. And the last bit of the hike is you have to sort of hurl yourself up on top of this rocky outcrop. And as I did this, as I hurled myself up on top of this rocky outcrop and I looked on the horizon, I made it just in time. There was this thin line of orange on the horizon. I sat down, it was warm, gentle breeze, silent. No one else up there. And this was the scene that morning as the sun rose. It was just a gorgeous morning. The interesting thing was I took the photo and then I thought, I'll just put it on Facebook, because of course, if it's not on Facebook, did it really happen? And so I took the photo, added a couple of filters, clever hashtag, up on Facebook it went, and that was the danger zone. Because after I checked out Facebook, as I was opening my phone, I saw a couple of new emails that I hadn't checked. I was waiting for my team in the US overnight, so I thought, I'll just check those emails. And one of them had a link off to a spreadsheet, and that had a link to a website, and then I thought, I'll just check the news headlines when I'm here, and I'll just check my bank balance and see if the credit card had gone out yet. Looked at my phone, 11 minutes had passed. I looked up, the sunrise was over. Something I'd gotten up at 4:30 to experience and missed. Because that inability to just be in the moment, to focus, to concentrate. How many of you are finding yourself increasingly doing the same sort of thing on a daily basis? It's a challenge. And it's interesting how psychologists are talking about the danger of this from a mental health perspective. I learned recently that the ancient Greek word for anxiety is actually the word marinma. Marinma actually means to be scattered, to be pulled in different directions. Is there any wonder we feel more stressed and more anxious today than ever before? Partly because of this stuff. Now, of course, in the workplace or in a business context, it's equally profound. According to the University of California, the average office worker today is interrupted or self-interrupts every 3.5 minutes. And here's the key. It takes 23 minutes to get back to the point of being as focused as you were before the interruption occurred. So you do the numbers. If you're being interrupted every 3.5 minutes, it takes 23 minutes to get back to the point of being in the zone, focused, getting results. Is it any wonder we feel like we're spinning our wheels every day? Okay, 30 seconds in your table groups. Here's the discussion question I want you to think about here for a few moments. The question is, for you on a daily basis, be honest, what is the biggest source of daily distraction for you? 30 seconds, table groups.
Facebook.
Go for it.
Facebook. Phone calls. Facebook is my distraction. Facebook. What's
It
yours?
takes a
Oh,
kind
it's
of
my
phone
biggest
calls when I'm actually working on phone calls.
Okay, 10 seconds to go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Be honest, hands up, what are the biggest distractions for you on a daily basis? Yeah.
Facebook.
Facebook, social media generally, thank you. Yeah.
Clients.
What's it? Clients. Aren't they a nuisance sometimes? Clients. Okay, yes. What was yours? Phone calls. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. What was yours? Grandchildren. Bless them, but oh yes, of course. Okay, yeah. What's it? Food. You get interrupted by food. A voracious appetite. I love it. Good. Okay, what's yours? Your partner. I can't do much about that one, I'm sorry, but your partner is the biggest distraction. And the interesting thing is, we mentioned a bit of technology, but the reality is it's not just the technology that's distracting us, is it? In fact, it's often the good things. I mean, the good is often the enemy of the best, isn't it? And the challenge is we have these competing things, and we've actually tricked ourselves into thinking we can do multiple things at once without it affecting our productivity, our effectiveness. I love the old Russian proverb, if you try and chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch 9. How true is that? Now what's interesting is most of us aren't chasing 2 things, we're chasing 20 things or more. We have a name for it, of course, nowadays, which is multitasking, and we think we're really good at multitasking. The data's pretty compelling. People who multitask are 40% slower and make a whole lot more mistakes than people who can just focus on the thing they're doing and get it done well. I love the insight from Steve Rizell, who's an award-winning photographer. He said, multitasking is really the opportunity to screw up more than one thing at once. So that isn't a great way of looking at it. Now, the reality is, life is full of distractions and the rest of it. How can you get into that flow state, enjoy that feeling of momentum on a daily basis in the midst of all these distractions? 3 quick tips for achieving focus on a daily basis. First key is if you're going to achieve focus, you need to switch off and shut out. You need to get really good at being an adult and setting boundaries and then keeping them. A couple of my good mates have done this in the last 12 months. They've actually deleted the Facebook app off their phone. They realised that every moment of the day they was opening and scrolling, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, wasting time. And so they just deleted the app, which means when they want to check Facebook, they have to actually browse to the website, which is a few more steps, so therefore they're less likely to do it as an instinct constantly. So, you know, according to Facebook's own data, we sit on that app for 51 minutes of the day for an average user. That is second only to the amount of time we spend eating and drinking every day. It's a huge distraction. And how many of you find email as a big distraction for you? Anyone get in that boat, number of email people? Here's a great tool you may want to check out, a tool called SaneBox. SaneBox is brilliant. It's not free, it's have to purchase the technology, but here's what it does. It sits in the back end of your inbox, and it filters your emails as they come through. It uses AI and learns very quickly the sort of emails that are urgent and important for you, and it quarantines anything that is non-urgent or not important. What that means is you're only getting the important stuff as it comes throughout the day, and you set a time maybe 4:45 in the afternoon, and all the other emails that's been quarantined all day get sent through in one batch, and you deal with them in 15 minutes. rather than being interrupted constantly. And I was talking with Chris Luxon, who's the CEO of Air New Zealand recently, and he was telling me one of the things he's done in the last little while that's changed how effective he is on a daily basis is he's begun to batch his emails. He said, I only check email 20 minutes at a time, 4 times a day. That's it. In between those times, my email program is shut down. This is a man with 28,000 staff. And he said, the great thing, by the way, is when my email's shut down and I'm not reachable, my team figure out the answers to their own questions. It's interesting, isn't it? Your downline are probably the same. If you're too easily accessible, they never learn to grow up themselves, okay? So setting boundaries, switching off, shutting out. Interesting thing too is that the simplest thing every one of you can do if you want to achieve more focus, as soon as we're done, in fact you can even do it now if you wanted to, simplest thing you can do, switch off all new message notifications on your phone, i.e. new emails, Facebook alerts, Instagram tags, whatever it is. So the difference that'll make is massive. In fact, here's the interesting piece when it comes to data and research looking at this. Every time that little ping goes off to tell you what new emails arrived, it actually makes you a little bit dumber. It does. According to the University of London 2 years ago, they looked at this and they found that the moment you hear that ping, in fact, let's just do a quick experiment here. All right? There it is. Feel it? Do you feel the intelligence evaporate? Let's try again. There it is. Yeah, you can do sense of that. According to this study, women lose 10 basis points off their effective IQ the moment that sound goes off. For the blokes, it's worse. You'd expect that, of course. We lose 15 basis points of their effective IQ. It's not permanent, but it's for that moment. Because here's what happens. Even if you have no idea who that email's from or what the message is about, your attention now is split. You're doing one thing, you're thinking, oh, who's that email from? Is that the one I was waiting for? Is it the one that's going to be from the irritating person I'm going to respond to? You start having an argument in your head with that person before you even know the email's arrived. There's a switching off new message notifications makes the biggest difference. Number 2, second key to achieving focus is so powerful. Let's get good at saying no. 2 letters will change your life. N and O. How many of you find it hard to say no though? Come on, be honest. Many of us do. It's hard to say no. We like being people pleasers, approval, addiction, all the rest of it. And yet saying no is so important. I love the quote from Steve Jobs here. He said, focus is not saying yes to the one thing, it is saying no to the 100 other good things in front of you at any given moment. Now this is a challenge because when you want to build your business, if you're in a sprint, you set an incentive deadline for instance, it's amazing the moment you set that incentive deadline, all your well-meaning friends all want to catch up, all want to hang out. The local sports group wants you to be on the committee, to help out with the fundraise, and these are all good things. And yet if you're going to be on purpose, if you're going to build momentum, you need to get good at saying no. Now, no is not about being mean-spirited, it's about being mission-driven. There's a key difference there. It's about setting boundaries because you've got a purpose you're working toward. Now, many of us overcomplicate the whole process of saying no to things. I love the insight from Tim Ferriss, who's the author of the 4-Hour Workweek. He said, you need to make decision-making a binary process. If it's not a hell yeah, it's automatically a no. In other words, if someone comes to you with an opportunity, an idea, can you help, can you get involved, in your gut, and you'll know straight away whether it's like, yeah, that hell yeah, that is on purpose, that is strategic, that is important, I'm committed. If you don't get that instant gut hell yeah, just automatically say sorry, the answer is no. Find a nice way of saying it, but if you make it simple, that is critical if you're going to build momentum and achieve focus. Number 3, third key is this. It's an interesting one many of us haven't thought of. Have a finishing frenzy. What we've discovered recently is that our brains operate much like our computers. If your computer ever starts to run like a dog, you take it to a technician, the first question they'll ask is, how many applications have you got open right now? And if you're like me, you'll say, well, I don't know, like I've got Word and PowerPoint and a couple of websites. And they'll say, no, not those applications. How many background applications have you got running right now? And then they open up a dialog box, they check the performance of your computer, and they'll say, you've got 127 background applications running right now. Do you know? I had no idea. And they start to shut them down. And you watch your performance, your computer performance roar back to life. And it's interesting, our brains are the same. Every task you have started but haven't finished is like one of those applications that's running in the background unconsciously for you, taking up processing capacity. So the moment you get a task done, nip it in the bud, knock it on the head, get it finished, it's like shutting the application down. And some of you have got hundreds of things that you've started and haven't finished and actually weigh on your mind. In fact, the father of modern psychology, a guy named William James, said there is nothing as fatiguing as the eternal hanging on of an uncompleted task. If you want to get to the point where you can achieve focus, my question for you would be this. What is one lingering project or task you could get done, knocked on the head, finished in the next 24 hours? In fact, make a list of 3 of them if you're really brave. The difference this makes is huge. All right, we talked about activity, we talked about focus. The C is a word that we heard from the True Health panel before. I loved that panel. It was so incredibly inspiring. And it's a word that we all know is important, but it's not the funnest word in the world. It's the word consistency. There's no shortcut. Consistency is critical. It's a word like discipline. It doesn't come natural to most of us. The interesting thing is, I've probably learned the most about consistency in the last few years since becoming a dad. This is a picture of my little boy. It says Max up on the screen at his 2nd birthday a few weeks ago. And I've probably learned the most about consistency from being a dad to this little boy. In the early stages, consistency of feed times and sleep times and all that stuff. In more recent times, I've learned about consistency in a surprising way. And one of the great things I've found about being a dad is that you rediscover all those books you had read to you when you were a kid, and you start reading them to your own child. And one of them that I rediscovered is this book here, The Tortoise and the Hare. Who remembers this book from when you were a kid? Many of you do. If you don't know this story, spoiler alert, the tortoise wins, okay? Every time. And even if you don't know the story, you know the moral to the story, which is slow and steady wins the race. We know this. And yet, in honesty, we find it really hard to do. Hard to follow through with. And here we are, first week of February. Most people who set New Year's resolutions have already broken them. It's just human nature. In fact, I love this meme that popped up on Facebook a little while ago. I thought it was so apt. I don't mean to brag, but I finished my 14-day diet in 3 hours and 12 minutes. So many people do exactly this. And I was speaking at a conference a few years ago, a big health conference, and one of the speakers before was talking about the psychology of consistency, why we find it so hard to be consistent, but also how to sort of shortcut that natural bent and achieve consistency on a daily basis. And there are some principles and some research you shared which I thought was so powerful and so helpful in the context you guys are operating in. And I want to leave you very quickly with 3 keys to achieving consistency, but it's not easy. It doesn't come naturally. The first key to achieving consistency is this: move before you're motivated to. I love the quote, it's so true, that motion precedes emotion. And those days you don't feel like picking up the phone, you don't feel like catching up with a client, but if you force yourself to act on conviction rather than waiting for the emotion to prompt you, you pick up the phone, and after you've made that phone call, how do you feel? Top of the world! The motivation catches up, doesn't it? I remember talking to a colleague of mine who said, he was trying to get fit a few years ago, and the thing he found hardest is every morning he'd wake up, and it was decision time. Do I go for a run today? Oh, it's raining outside, it's cold. He lived in Melbourne, so it seems to be always cold, raining. And he said, yeah, hardest thing was that decision point. And the simplest solution, I loved it, he said, I just started to sleep in my running gear. The full outfit, like shoes and all. He said, that way when I woke up, all I had to do was roll out of bed and I was good to go. He said, the decision was taken out of my hands. And I thought, okay, I can't imagine sleeping in shoes, but he did. And it worked. I mean, just simple things. Move before the motivation's there and allow the motivation to catch up. Because it's going to be easy for you to be busy and productive after this conference. Because of the lights and the excitement, the broken chandelier, and it's all this. Wasn't that beautiful? Not for the hotel. But it's interesting, all these things, it's exciting to be here. You go back to your normal life, and it's like, game on. What about next Friday? What about the following Tuesday? What about the following Wednesday? In 3 weeks' time, the motivation, this will all disappear. It just does. You know that. What will cause you to act, to do the things you need to do to build a business at that point? If you wait till you're motivated, you become a slave to your emotions rather than move before the motivation's there and allow the motivation to catch up. I love the insight from the founder of Habitat for Humanity, and some of the portion of my book sales go to this charity. If you're not familiar with it, it's amazing. Willard Fuller said this: you don't think yourself into a new way of acting, you act yourself into a new way of thinking. And it's so true. Motion does precede emotion. Okay, first key is this: move before you're motivated. Second key to achieving consistency is this: get some early wins. Get some early wins. It's so important. I love hearing from the True Health panel talking about the importance of goals, and it's so critical we set goals, particularly early stage goals. And one of the quotes that I love it because I made it up, I guess, and this quote, I just think it so captures something so true, and we heard it before on this panel. Progress is the key to perseverance. It really is. If you don't feel you're making progress, you will not stick at whatever it is that you've set as a goal. I think it was Christine, who said it before, she had the photos that every week or every month she didn't feel like she was changing, didn't feel like she was losing weight, but having the photos there as a reminder, I'm making progress. That's what will keep you in the game. And again, this is why goal setting is so important. And any of you who are familiar with Jim Collins' book, Built to Last, would be familiar with this acronym here. Jim Collins talked about the importance of having BHAG. So who knows what a BHAG stands for? Big, hairy, audacious goals. Well done. Of course, big, hairy, audacious goals, they're great. Big, long-term, light on the horizon, guiding star, that's all great. Can I suggest if you're going to build momentum and be consistent, what you need is not a whole lot of big BHAGs. What you need is these things here, SBAGs. An SBAG, I learned this from a podcast called Leading with Urgency from a guy named Craig Rochelle in the US. Fantastic leadership speaker. And Craig Rochelle said, if you're going to build momentum, get traction out of the gate, you need SBAGs. And what does SBAG stand for? It's to do a stretching but achievable goal. You need something that in a week or 2 weeks' time, that's the horizon. Like by next Friday, we're going to achieve these 2 things. So by getting early wins, it gets you out of the gate, gives you the sense of forward movement. And we all know success breeds success. Get some early wins that will keep you in the game, give you a sense of progress. All right, number 3, third and final key is you need to pick a sustainable pace. Pick a sustainable pace. I love the insight from Jim Rohn. So true. Eating 7 apples on a Sunday night will be never as effective as eating 1 apple every single day. It's the little stuff. It's not just the rate of activity, it's the rhythm of activity that matters. It's better for you to do small things every day than big things sporadically to build your business. Now, the everyday piece is the key part of that quote. And one of the career highlights for me was last year speaking at a big conference in the US. The other keynote speaker at this event was someone I've admired for many, many years. I think I read the first one of his books when I was about 16. It was on my dad's bookshelf, and I pinched it off the shelf and read it. And it was a book by this guy here. Many of you probably be fans of his as well. Clicker stopped working. It's myself, there we are. John Maxwell. Many of you know him, of course. And I've admired him for years. It was just great to get some time backstage with him at this conference in the States. And one of the things John Maxwell said that day stood out to me, stuck with me. He said this. He said, people need to understand, they need to learn that you will never change your life until you change something you do on a daily basis. Can you just advance one more slide, please? That would be superb. He's decidedly unfriendly. I love that quote, it's so true. It's the daily based stuff. That's what transforms your business over time. It's not the binges of activity, it's the baby steps along the way. That's where the game is played, that's where the game is won. Right, we are almost out of time. It's time for big lunch. So I'm going to wrap up very shortly. What I'll do before we finish up, I'll just pop my details up on the screen. Feel free to check out the website. There's a whole pile of things that might be helpful up there. There's a whole video channel on our website with short clips that build on some of the things we've talked about today. So for any of you who are down 19 who aren't here, feel free to send them there. A whole lot of interesting, valuable stuff they can just watch. It's all free videos online, so feel free to check that out. I also threw in a couple of books in case that would be valuable. I think they're going to be out near where you got your registration stuff. Yesterday. The first one is the book that a lot of the research we talked about today comes from. It's a book on this theme of momentum. And essentially the central premise of this book is, how do you build traction and growth that sticks? And there's actually a little test in here that's interesting that will help you figure out or determine right now how much momentum your business has got. Try and put a number on it. The beauty of that is that it's measured, you can improve it. And so there's some copies of that one out there. There's also some copies of the book on innovation, reinvention, so the Battle for Relevance book, and this is the one where some of the process go to Habitat for Humanity. So feel free to have a look at that one if that would be helpful. And I also threw some copies of the book on millennials and Generation Y in. This is the first book I wrote, all about how to bridge that generation gap. There goes the microphone. Because it's so critical. And for you guys as a business, connecting with this emerging generation is vital. But it's not easy. It's not easy. The stuff that works with them is different language, different focus. The other thing, in case it would be useful, I only threw this in the last minute because of what as business owners this might be of value to some of you. One of the things we did last year is we actually put together a program designed to make all of this in bite-sized chunks. It's a coaching program basically over 2 months, so 60 days. And I guess it's ideal for this time of the year when you're sort of ramping up for the year ahead. And it's 2 months of a video program designed to help you implement the stuff we've talked about, rather than just buying a book that sort of sits on your shelf and all the best of intentions and the rest of it. So basically over 2 months, you get videos every few days from me, coaching module videos from me around how to apply this stuff, a whole lot of implementation activities. It's all designed to accelerate the results you're getting. So that might be useful for some of you. And normally they're 150 something bucks, but they're about 10% off if you want to grab one of those today. And for today, if you want to grab one of those, these are all the codes on the back, the unique code to get access. I'll give you one of these books, like a handbook then, for the program. So if you want to, you can get that for free if you want to buy one of those programs. But just as we draw all this together, we talked about New Year's resolutions before, and as the new year clicked over, my news feed on Facebook, probably like yours, was full of motivational quotes. People like David Avocado Wolf, I don't know who that guy is, but all these quotes from him about being healthy for the new year. But one of the quotes that stood out to me this year stood out because it was from an unusual source, and it's a doctor who's normally committed to mental health, not physical health. There's a quote from this guy on the screen. Dr. Phil said, in a year's time, you're going to either weigh more or less than you do right now. Now, when I first read that, I thought, what? Like, I thought it was so obvious. I thought I'd missed something, so I reread it. And read it a third time. And it's interesting how often profound truth is buried in simple stuff, isn't it? Common sense. And it's actually the profound truth in this ties back to the thing we started with, the law of entropy. The reality is life has no pause button. You are always either advancing or retreating. You're either growing or you're going backwards. There is no option to stand still. In 12 months' time, it is scientifically impossible. Your weight will not have fluctuated by 1 gram over that time period. You'll have gone up or down based on the choices you make between now and then. And it's exactly the same when it comes to building momentum. I love this quote from that podcast from Craig Rochelle that I shared before. One of the quotes that stood out to me most in the last 12 months. I think it was an advanced slide, would be great. The quote was, you can either make excuses or you can make progress. You can't make both. And as we go into this year, there's plenty of ways and reasons to make excuses. It's not the right time, haven't got enough information, the kids are too young, they're just starting school, whatever it is. The reality is in 12 months' time, when you come back to this conference, where you are will be a function of the decisions, daily, routine decisions, based on the stuff we talked about today. And there is no shortcut to building momentum, there is no silver bullet, but there is a simple formula, and it works. The question is, what will you do with it? Thank you so much again for having me. All the very best. Cheers.
Sat out there thinking, I wish this person was here, I wish that person was there, people in your team that should be here listening to people like Michael with the wisdom, and this is how we grow and really get ideas of how to move forward in our business. So thank you, Michael, that was invaluable, and I'm certainly glad my team's here to listen to his advice. And who, like me, has got an addiction to Facebook, a little bit like a drug addict has to drugs, and when they say you've got to remove that app from your phone, you get this gut feeling going, I know I've got to do it, because Facebook does really take a lot from me and the time away from my business, and sometimes we are so busy being busy that I sometimes think I just might miss something, or Facebook, I'm running my business on Facebook, but really I'm just scrolling, so I'm the biggest culprit for that. Anyway, thank you, Michael.
Okay, everybody, we've had a great morning. We're about to take a lunch break. So, if you've got your smoothie vouchers that you haven't used,